Hi, Jatin.
Hello,
How are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Welcome to Cyber People Talks.
I'm excited to be here.
How are you feeling about being a guest on my show today?
I feel excited. I think I've seen a lot of your podcasts. They look good. I've been watching it on YouTube. So it's exciting to be in one of those myself.
Thank you for being our guest. I'm very excited too.
Pleasure.
So I think let's first understand, Jatin, what is ISO 27001 and why is it important?
So ISO 27001 is actually a framework that organizations can use when they want to implement a structured, a disciplined approach towards implementation of information security. So it's also called as an ISMS framework, which stands for Information Security Management System. I always want to look at it actually in the reverse order. So it's a system for the management of security of information. So any organization that has digital assets, a lot of organizations today perform their businesses online. They have a lot of attack surface. Now, if they want to protect against those attacks and they want to implement good information security practices, they should have a framework like ISO 27001 that helps build that foundation that organizations need to defend themselves, but also to prepare for an attack.
Yeah. So are there any particular kind of industry that needs these kind of certifications? And if they don't have that, what could be the repercussions?
So ISO 27001 is an industry agnostic standard. It applies to all kinds of industries. It applies to all kinds of organizations of all sizes in any given geography. So it's not particularly only designed for one particular type of organization. Any organization can implement it. Those organizations that have multiple locations, they operate globally, that I believe benefit more from having a solid foundation which consistently applies across their office locations, data center locations. So it's industry agnostic, but there are benefits for certain industries than the others.
And what happens if they don't have it?
Oh, wow. It's also a trust mechanism. Look, if you're certified, you're telling the world that you're following certain key principles for protecting information security. If you don't have a certification, there is nobody who's from a third-party perspective, from an independent look perspective, have assessed how good or bad your implementation of information security practices are. So lack of certification actually demonstrates that you haven't gone ahead and created that trust in the market that people can look at and say, all right, I want to do business with this organization because they follow the same practices that I follow in my own organization. That's where ISO 27001 eliminates that barrier for the trade.
So this is one of the advantages that you would have in the market, like a competitive advantage.
I wouldn't say you have a competitive advantage. If you are certified and I'm certified, there's not particularly a competitive advantage. But if you're certified and I'm not, there's a huge competitive disadvantage.
Okay, and what particularly do you like about this topic that you've been, doing this for almost 2 decades now?
Yeah. So information security is an evolving field. We've come to know that as and when we become more and more dependent on the internet in the cyber domain, we're more exposed with our digital assets being exposed on the internet. That's a normal way of doing business these days. But what I like about this domain is that the opportunities are endless, right? But also it's gained popularity more so in these geopolitical tensions because the war is not only done in the physical space, it's also done in the digital space. So that's where I think it's important for organizations to have an understanding of how they are exposed with the threats online. And that's where it helps.
So are you saying that organizations that are certified, hackers will have difficulty in hacking them?
No, I'm not saying that. Look, an ISO 27001 is a mechanism that helps you make decisions. In my opinion, 80% of the attacks happen due to poor decisions or a lack of decision. So ISO 27001 gives you a structured approach when you want to take the right decisions towards information security. But there is no magic wand in information security. It's like you're saying there is a car, there's a seat belt, there's a brake, you have all kinds of controls, but I'm going to drive at 300 kilometers per hour, hit a wall, but because I'm wearing a seat belt, nothing should happen to me, right? So that world does not exist. What we're talking about is, should you have a cyber attack, and if you're ISO 27001 certified, somebody who's independent has looked at how your controls are performing, you have a better chance of coming back on your feet. So you're more resilient. But also, yes, you're better prepared with your defenses, right? But look, there's a saying in the world of cybersecurity, invincibility comes with defense, but the possibility of a victory comes with attack. So you have to take a decision which side you want to be in. You know, every battle is won before it is ever fought. And that's to do with your mindset. That's why I say 80% of the organizations suffer from cyber attacks because of a poor decision-making or a lack of decisions, right? The decision-making needs to be very, very clear. Do you want to be defending or do you want to be attacking? Do you want to be the hunted or do you want to be the hunter, right? It's about the mindset. There's another saying that victorious warriors win first and then go to battle. Whereas the defeated warriors go to battle first and then seek to win. It's about the mindset again. It's about what kind of decisions you would take. Most of the cyber attacks happen when you're not disciplined in the way you're implementing your cybersecurity controls. So there are always 3 lines of defense in any business. If your first line of defense fails, the second and the third one should pick it up. The third line of defense is the internal auditor. Now, if you're doing a good internal audit and you have all the lines of defense working perfectly, your controls are working fine, there's a less chance that somebody might find a vulnerability and enter into your organization's perimeter and steal the information, right? But if all the 3 lines of defense have failed because you're looking at it from your own self perspective, then you need an independent assessor who can come with the industry experience, having looked at different information security implementations to provide you with an assurance to look at your management framework and see how you're taking the decisions and give you their recommendations. That's how you evolve. But indeed, there is no magic wand. Even if you're certified, does not mean you're 100% protected from cyber attacks. There's nothing called as 100% security.
Yeah, correct. Do you have, maybe for our audience to understand a little better, do you have an example for us where, an organization has implemented ISO 27001 perfectly, they're certified, all the 3 levels have been met, like you just mentioned, yet they got attacked. Yeah. But then because of all these nicely implemented controls, they could come back at their own feet properly. Do you have an example for that?
I have many examples of this. Look, you have to understand, what does 27001 do to an organization when you implement that kind of a framework? You are better prepared in understanding of your business. You know who your stakeholders are and how to communicate with them. You know what their expectations are. So should you be under a cyber attack, there are regulators who expect you to communicate with them within a minimum number of hours. Have you got a communication strategy? So ISO 27001 prepares you for that. Then it also helps you understand the scope of your business. What kind of products and services do you have? Where do you deliver these products and services? When do you deliver? Do you have 24/7 operations, or do you operate in a particular geography from a 9 to 5 kind of a time window? What are the locations and how important are those locations? There are locations which are not so important. Should you have a full domain of security implemented at not so critical places? So it also helps you optimize. But also from a governance point of view, and ISO 27001 gives you a mechanism to engage with the board members, to engage with the business. Your first line of defense becomes very strong. So there are step-by-step procedures you would take while implementing ISO 27001 that will create those multi-layer defense mechanism, so to protect the organization from these cyber attacks. Now, there are very smart hackers out there who would still penetrate into your boundary. But if you're monitoring and if you're alert, if you have a mechanism you know where to look for these attackers, you would be much more successful in threat hunting in your environment and taking these attackers out of your boundaries.
Okay.
So that resilience is what ISO 27001 provides you. So yes, it does not guarantee you would not be attacked, but should you be under an attack, it helps you identify it first, detect it, and it helps you correct things that should be corrected so that more attackers don't come in, right? And it makes you get on your feet faster.
Yeah. So what is the future of ISO standards and the certifications in your view?
I think there are three trends these days in 2024, which are likely to go ahead and even further enhance in 2025. So we're in the middle of a geopolitical war, and that creates a lot of advantage for attackers. Many of them are actually state-sponsored, right? So that trend will continue in 2025, and hence cybersecurity becomes even more important for any organization. The second trend is we're literally looking at a looming recession. And those are the circumstances that attackers tend to gain benefits from, right? And the third trend we're seeing is the new regulation and things like AI popping up. So that provides the speed to both the attackers as well as the defenders. So these trends will continue, and hence I believe ISO and the requirement for having a framework will become even more important. There are new ISO standards coming up as well.
Yeah.
Right? These ISO standards are updated so as to make the industry ready for these kinds of trends. So I believe there is a very bright future for ISO standards and frameworks. I believe organizations that are implementing these frameworks will benefit from being prepared to adapt and have their own transformation journey and look to become more mature when it comes to topics like information security, privacy, and compliance to other regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, the newest regulation of AI has come out. So what's your take on that? What's your opinion on the regulation?
I think these kinds of regulations are needed. AI is a topic which is still fairly new. Everybody's talking about it, but it is very unregulated in a lot of markets. People are also scared of AI, and some people seek a lot of opportunities in AI. It's like when the electricity came out. People said, hey, you touch it and you die. That's what people say about AI these days. But imagine a world today without electricity. So that is what is going to happen. Eventually, you're going to be so used to AI that it's just going to become a normal thing. So I believe these regulations will drive the demand for ISOs. And there's a new standard on AI. It's called ISO27001 that came out in December of 2023. It's picking up a lot of popularity. A lot of organizations look at how they can govern AI, and these standards help there. How do you manage risks related to AI? That's where these standards help as well.
Right. So one of the newest certifications or the regulations that have come out is of AI. Are there any new certifications other than that are coming in?
Yes. These regulations are driven primarily in the EU, and that is to do how certain new topics are impacting our society. So these regulations will keep coming up. So there are, I'd say, some important regulations that have come out and will come out in the near future. So we're talking about NIS2 directive in EU. We're talking about DORA, the Resilience Act. We're talking about the EU AI Act. GDPR has been there for certain years. There's the DSA, DMA Act. So the regulatory space will keep evolving. Organizations need to find out what is the foundation that they have to maintain to comply to various different regulations. And that's where, again, ISO helps you, right? It gives you a structured approach, a step-by-step mechanism to establish a framework, to implement controls, to monitor, maintain what you've just implemented, and continually improve.
Yeah. Okay. Talking from a CISO's perspective, what do you think the mindset of a CISO should be of a large organization to keep himself or the organization protected?
Assume you're under an attack. and then prepare. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's about your mindset, right? Are you preparing to defend yourself, or are you aggressive enough or offensive enough to attack should someone even come near to your proximity, right? So for me, CISOs need to have a very aggressive mindset to be able to defend themselves, right? My message to them would be, assume you're under an attack, what would you do, right? Imagine you're under a ransomware attack and somebody's asking for some Bitcoins. Would you pull out the cables or would you pay? And that's an important decision.
Yeah.
If you haven't practiced it, if you haven't rehearsed it, and you're completely in an unknown territory, that's when it's going to be very difficult for you to come back on your feet. And business is suffering. It's every second, every minute, every hour, you're suffering business loss. And that's where board members need to be more engaged. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're not prepared, you've already lost.
Yeah. My next question was, what would you tell the board? Because, as you know, earlier, things were different when it came to cybersecurity topic.
Right.
Now it's picking up and people are becoming more aware. So what would you tell the board about how important cybersecurity is, or how should they, bring it as a topic holistically within their discussions?
Yeah. I would ask board members to be more engaged. They, again, have to be part of the rehearsal. They have to exercise as well, but they are the ones who take the right decisions for the organization. So they have to be strategically aligned towards how information security is implemented. So they need to think about some key questions, things like, okay, if I'm under a cyber attack today, how soon will I get to know, first of all? So how good is your detection mechanism, right? There are various surveys done on this, and it is said that it takes you around 9 to 10 months to identify a data breach. So if you were to be attacked today, you would only get to know about the data breach happening today only after 10 months. It's too late. So how good are your mechanisms, your detection controls, to bring that 10 months, 9 months down to, let's say, a few hours, right? So that's first thing that they need to understand and ask themselves a question. Secondly, how prepared are they? So now you got to know that you're under a cyber attack. How good is your response mechanism? So how good are your corrective controls? Things like backup mechanism. Do you have backup of your critical infrastructure? So that's what the board members need to be engaged about. Which products and services are more critical to be delivered under such kind of a scenario is something that the board members need to tell, right? So the business owns cybersecurity rather than a CISO. CISO is someone who implements and transforms an organization's cybersecurity defense and preparedness, or its ability to attack. But the CISO does not take the business decisions. Hence, CISO needs to be on the table while critical decisions are taken about the business. Yeah. So the board members have to think about these kinds of questions. I just gave a couple of those, but there are way many questions. They need to understand what their attack surface is.
Yeah.
They should be given reports by the CISO on a regular basis about their control maturity, about these ISO standards, certification audit results, also about penetration testing results, how the vulnerability assessment results have come out. So boards need to be more engaged.
Yeah. Going back to the topic, ISO 27001 certification particularly, if an organization wants to be certified, what is the approximate cost that this organization need to incur? One. And second, how much time does it take for an organization to get certified?
Yeah. This totally depends on the scope of an organization. So the first question is about the cost. It can cost you from as low as €50,000 to as high as 100 million. So the range is big, but the cost depends on several factors. Number one, where do you want to implement information security and what's your scope of ISO 27001? So what products and services are in scope? Again, what locations are in the scope? What kind of technology do you deploy? What kind of functions, business functions do you want to put in the scope? So should you put HR in the scope? Should you put only IT in the scope? Should you put facility management in the scope?
And who decides this?
Again, it should be decided together with the business owners, and CISO is the one who implements it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a collective business decision. Many organizations look at ISO 27001 only as a cost, and I should tell that there are several benefits of implementing an information security management system, and the costs that you incur, they are not as exponential as the cost when you have an attack and you have to suffer the loss of business. So anybody who thinks that information security is a cost, then be prepared for the cost of an attack. Yeah. The second thing that you talked about was how long does it take? Again, it depends on those factors. An ISO certification audit, it itself is not very long. It takes much more time to implement the ISMS first and to maintain the ISMS. So if you're an organization who has got no experience of ISO and you're just beginning today, I would say on an average, it'll take you between 10 months to 12 months.
Okay.
To implement the first cycle. Of course, you'll learn a lot from that cycle. If you've done this correctly and you have the right resources and the right competencies, you would do it much quicker the next time. And as you evolve, you will learn much more, and the cycle will be much faster.
Yeah.
For the same organization that will take almost a year to implement an ISMS, it could take 6 to 8 weeks, again, depending on your scope. So in both the questions you ask, understanding the scope is the most important thing.
Yeah. Right. How do you keep yourself up to date with these kind of developments? Is there some app or something that you use, or is there any particular website that you visit?
There are a lot of YouTube channels that talk about ISO, that have podcasts like these. So I do listen to those. I have also subscribed to a lot of LinkedIn updates, for example. So there is a lot of social media knowledge out there. I read a lot of books as well and articles from people who are in this domain. So that's how I keep myself up to date. There are, of course, many reports from famous reporting agencies like Gartner or the Forrester, and you can read that, their documents to stay up to date about the trends. Definitely look at some of the cyber threat intelligence tools out there that also provide you regular updates. So I've also got a subscription to those.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. And when it comes to hiring, because Cyber People is a recruitment company, always interested in knowing what industry experts like you think about hiring. So how or what skills do you actually look into in a person when you have to hire that person?
Yeah. I believe cybersecurity, information security in general, is a domain where communication skills are really the most important skills to have. So you can be very technical, but if you can't communicate with business, then you're shooting in the dark. You're basically assuming a lot of things. So the first thing I look for in anybody who I want to hire for my team is how good they are in their communication skills. I also look for their dedication towards the domain. If you're just looking at this as a job, you're in the wrong domain. You'll have to invest a lot doing reading during the weekends. You'll have to invest your personal time in doing certifications. You have to keep yourself up to date about the trends in the market. So I look for personalities that have good communication skills, people who are passionate about this topic. And then I would, of course, want to have a look at their technical skills. But technical skill is not the first priority for me.
Okay. Well, good to know that there is a scope for non-technical people also in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And communication being number one for him. So that's great. What would you say to a young starter who is starting his journey on the compliance side of cybersecurity? Any words for him?
I would say in the beginning of your career, try and look at two approaches. So you can go a mile deep and an inch wide. That means you pick up a topic and you go as much into the details of that, and then you learn everything about it. See if you're passionate about that topic and you want to stay in that topic. So take example of cryptography or access reviews or change management, incident management, resilience. You can pick up any topic, but go deeper to understand that topic. That's one approach. The other approach is go inch deep and a mile wide, which is look at different topics, understand every topic, but explore. It is so important in your first 3 to 5 years of experience to explore, but also to pick up one or two topics to become an expert on. So that once you have 5 years of experience, you've seen a lot of topics and you are expert on one or two, now you have the clarity which direction you want to go in. So when I started my career, I was an ethical hacker. I used to do penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. In those days, I used to work on firewall and VPN devices. So I did go into becoming an expert in one or two topics, but I did explore a lot of other topics. And that's how, I was with 4.5, 5 years of experience when I decided to move from a very technical cybersecurity profile to more of a GRC profile. Because of the fact that I could explore many of the topics, but I still remain technical. I do cybersecurity as a hobby, as a passion, but I'm a GRC person when it comes to my career, my job. So that's my advice. Explore and don't think cybersecurity is only about technical topics or only about the GRC domains. You could also be someone, I've seen people who are cybersecurity experts have no background of cybersecurity, but they're communication experts, right? You need people to be able to communicate with your stakeholders when you're under a circumstance where you haven't looked at communication strategies. Those organizations that don't have those communication strategies often struggle. And businesses go down because they haven't met the regulatory requirements. So endless possibilities, a lot of opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Jatin. We are going to move into our next round, which is the rapid fire round.
Okay.
It's a fun round. So we have about 10 questions for you, and you need to answer them as quickly as possible.
How much time do I have to answer each question?
There is no time limit, but try to be as fast as possible. Yes? Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. One cybersecurity myth that you would like to bust.
Oh, that I have passwords and I'm secure.
Okay. When was ISO 27001 last updated?
It was last updated in 2022. So any organization that is currently certified on the 2013 version of ISO 27001 have until October 31st, 2025 to transition into the 2022 version. After this date, the 31st of October 2025, their 2013 version of the standard is no longer valid.
Okay.
Right? If you're an organization that hasn't been certified on 27001, you cannot be certified on 2013 version anymore. So you have to go with 2022 version. And that change happened with a lot of changes in the controls, not so much into the structure of the standard, but the controls part.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. How many questions are there in ISO 27001 certification exam?
That really depends on who's taking the exam, but I would say something between 20 to 25 questions. There are many multiple choice questions and open-ended questions, but it really depends on which certification body you've followed the training with and who's writing the exam.
Okay. All right. What's your best password advice in 3 words?
Do not have passwords.
Do not have passwords.
Try to go passwordless.
And how would you do that?
For a lot of years, we thought passwords were the strongest way to authenticate and identify yourself to the system. But there's been new research developed by NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the US, and they've recommended that passwords are not necessarily the strongest form of authentication for yourself. So go passwordless, look at the single sign-on mechanism, and there are other ways to authenticate than just the factor about passwords.
And can you name a few? What are those?
Yeah, so there are 3 factors when you talk about authentication. It's about something you know, something you are, and something you have. So something you know could be like a password or a PIN. That's a single factor. Something you are is like a biometric scan, so your retina scan or your fingerprint scan or your face scan. And something you have could be like a mobile phone or a token or a chip card. So these are three factors: something you know, something you have, and something you are. Often people get confused when I would say, oh, I have a password and then I have a PIN. That's still a single factor authentication mechanism. That's not multi-factor. You have to have one or two or three. All the three factors are the most secure. A single factor is the weakest mechanism.
Wouldn't that take forever for a person to get into the website or something is looking?
It does take more time.
Yeah.
So it is, of course, more difficult for yourself to enter into a website or into a system. But it is difficult for you. That means it's even more difficult for an attacker.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? I would even go and say, in my experience, 80% of the ransomware attacks I've seen could have been avoided with a single two-factor authentication mechanism. Right? But it has to be a two-factor or a three-factor. The three factors, again, something you know, something you have, and something you are, should be there. So a password as a single factor authentication mechanism is not so strong.
Okay. Clear. How many mandatory clauses are there in ISO 27001?
Oh, now you're going technical. So the clauses 4 till clause 10 are mandatory. You cannot skip any one of those. So as a certification auditor myself, I often find organizations do not understand the fact that they have to follow clauses 4 all the way to the clauses 10 and go in a sequence and do not skip any one of those. As an auditor, I often find when organizations skip those, they find it challenging to defend themselves in an audit and give me the evidence of a full management system cycle. Right. So as an example, you've defined a scope, but you don't have a proper governance mechanism. Roles, responsibilities aren't defined. You've done a risk assessment, but you're not monitoring the controls. Then you've just done bits and pieces of a management system. You don't have a cycle.
Right.
Right. So it is important to go through each and every clause and remember clauses 4 to 10 are mandatory.
Right. Okay. How many ISO controls are there in NXA?
Okay. There are 93 controls in the latest version of ISO 27001, which is the 2022 version. The previous version, 2013 version, had 114 controls.
Okay. So you know them by heart. Okay. If you could have one superpower for cybersecurity, what would that be?
To look into the future and understand who's actually trying to attack my organization. So to learn the TTPs, as we call it in the cybersecurity domain, the tactics, techniques, and procedures of an attacker. That superpower, if I would have, I would make world a much safer place.
Yeah, that's nice. I think we touched upon this, but what is your go-to cybersecurity app or tool?
There's not one particular app that I go to, but a type of app, I would say. Any organization should consider having a very strong cyber threat exposure management tool to understand what digital assets are exposed online. Also to be able to, like I said, learn the TTPs of an attacker. You should have a good team scanning the World Wide Web and looking at the possibility for someone trying to hack you.
Okay. What is your personal cybersecurity mantra?
Stay up to date and never assume.
And what's your favorite cybersecurity success story?
For me, I think your story is quite successful as well, Khushbu. I think you came from literally no background in cybersecurity, and you've developed a very strong cybersecurity business. I think what you do for me is a good example of a success story, because it's so hard to find the right skill set in the market. There are people who claim that they are cybersecurity expert, but in reality, you don't often find people who can do a good job in cybersecurity. So your domain is pretty important. I'm quite fascinated with how you've developed cyber people.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say that, and I'm flattered. With this flattering note, I want to end the conversation here. I hope you had fun.
I had a lot of fun.
And I wish you all the best. And Yes, Merry Christmas to everyone out there and very happy and prosperous New Year. This is the last episode of the year and we have ended it with a bang. Thank you.
Thank you so much.